Shalom Israel. Before I start, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Bahara Kakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles in Israel who rule and teach well, the Akims and the Iris and Bibles and those pushing leaders in truth and sincerity, to the brothers and sisters in the truth. As always, I like to share certain videos that come my way. And this was another video that a brother sent me. Me personally, I'd never heard of this. This is the Ellaine Massacre. It says the bloodiest racial conflict in US history. Now, the death count that they're giving there, it doesn't seem as large as others that we've heard of, but the way it's gone about is quite graphic. Hence, they've put up the warning. So I just want to share this video here. And we know that throughout history, Esau has committed various massacres, and not putting Jake aside as if Jake is all righteous in that. Recently in the UK, we've been seeing a number of videos passing around on the WhatsApp where Jake has been killing Jake, knife stabbings. So I'm not saying that we're all righteous, but even 9/11, that wasn't put down as a massacre. Yeah, but Esau has committed various massacres throughout the ages, and this is just another one of those which have been kept quiet. Like I said, I hadn't heard of this until the brother sent me the video. This is so I'm going to play the video, but I just want to read a few scriptures first. This is Ezekiel 35. I'm going to start 1, and these are prophecies which has to come to pass. When you read some of these prophecies, you can see why the Most High has passed down the judgment in these prophecies that he has, because Esau himself has escaped judgment. You hear about Cain saying he shall become a fugitive and a vagabond. Fugitive is someone that's running away from judgment, and Esau's judgment will catch up with him. This is Ezekiel 35:1. It says, "Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it." So this is a prophecy against Mount Seir, against Edom. It says, "And say unto it, Thus saith the Lord power, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord." Why? Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. So throughout the ages, when we look, we see that Esau is not just killed the children of Israel, he's massacred the children of Israel. I'm going to look at that word in a minute. It says, "Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Seest thou as not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee." And you know that Esau does not hate blood. He does not hate blood. So the judgment that will come to them is that blood will pursue them. This is Isaiah 34. I'll start 1. It says, the heading says, "The Most High's wrath against the nations." Yeah. Now we're gonna read, because he's got judgment coming for all these nations, but one nation has been escaping judgment for a very long time, and they have a specific judgment coming to them. This is Isaiah 34:1. "Come near ye, nations, to hear, and hearken ye people. Let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world and all things that come forth of it. For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations." So like I say, in all these nations as judgment. When you read Joel 3, the judgment that is bringing upon these nations is the things that they have done to us as a people. It says, especially upon Edom. It says, "For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He has utterly destroyed them. He has delivered them to the slaughter." So this is speaking in a present tense. Yeah, but this is future prophecy. And the reason why it's spoken is a present tense, because it's something that will happen. So the Most High is saying it as if it's happened already, because it's a done deal. It says, "Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. Jump down. Verse 4, it says, all the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down as the leaf falleth off from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. And the reason why it will be rolled together as a scroll, because that would be those nuclear bombs. It says, for my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, Edom, and upon the people of my curse the judgment. Because as I've mentioned, throughout the ages, Esau has been escaping judgment. They've not been judged for the things that they have done. Verse 6 says, the sword of the Lord is filled with blood, is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of kidneys of rams. For the Lord as a sacrifice in Bozrah, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. So this video said the Ellaine massacre. So let's see what that means, because the Most High ain't passing these judgment unfairly. There's a reason why Esau has the judgment that they have. Massacre, an indiscriminate and brutal slaughter of many people. It says the attack was described as a cold-blooded massacre. Another one says deliberately and brutally kill, in brackets, many people. And the example it gives, thousands were brutally massacred by soldiers. So I'm going to play this video so you can see why this judgment is being passed by the Most High. Actually, got one more to read before I play the video. This is Ezekiel 25:12. Thus saith the Lord power, because that Edom has dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance. How did they take vengeance? Through massacring our people. And has greatly offended and revenged himself upon them. Yeah, they've offended the Most High, because we're the apple of the Lord's eye. Therefore, thus saith the Lord power, I will also stretch out my hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. Yeah, the Lord's coming to perform his own massacre, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel. But the difference is, there's a reason why the Most High is bringing this massacre. It's because of judgment. Yeah, it says, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel. So this is how the Most High passes judgment. Like, judgment is being passed upon us by the hands of these other nations, and by our hands is how he will pass his judgment upon these other nations. So Ezekiel 25:14, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, and they shall do in Edom according to mine anger, and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord power. Now, I just want to play this video. Like I said, we hear, or many of us have, know about Black Wall Street, but this was one that I myself didn't know about. Now, this is a short video. If you go online, you can find longer ones, but I'm just going to play this because I don't want it to be too long.
It was called the Red Summer of 1919, named for the blood that ran through America's cities during months of racial unrest. African-American soldiers had returned home from the Great War, World War I, to a country still teeming with discrimination. And in their quest for civil rights, tensions between blacks and whites reached a tipping point. Deadly race riots broke out in over 24 cities, but one rural town, Ellaine, Arkansas, would become the epicenter for the bloodshed. The violence there, lynch mobs, torture, indiscriminate murder, was so horrific it would go down in history not as a race riot, but as the Ellaine Massacre. This is history. Dark history. During World War I, more than 350,000 African-American soldiers enlisted to serve, but while they fought for democracy abroad, their own country, America, was still not willing to see them as equal.
White supremacy was very mainstream at this time in the United States. Basically, a lot of African Americans were seeking to obtain their full rights and equality in the United States, and violence was often used by mobs of whites.
Tensions reached a boiling point in the summer of 1919. Race riots broke out in dozens of cities across the country. But in the rural South, something even more menacing was taking form. There, slavery existed in all but name. In a system called sharecropping, farmers provided landowners with labor for a share of crops produced. But the system was rigged. Sharecroppers were often kept in perpetual debt.
One black sharecropper raised $500 worth of cotton, and his landlord told him, "Yeah, but you used $697 worth of supplies, so you owe me money."
Everyone who has any power at this point is working to make sure they keep African American laborers tied to the land.
No, select Asia.
Live streaming can be tricky, and sometimes trying to find the right song.
For roughly 50 years, the system went unchecked. In the fall of 1918, a black man from Arkansas had had enough. Robert Hill had decided to form a union to represent sharecroppers. It was a dangerous decision, and one that would set off a chain of events involving mass murder, torture, and a landmark Supreme Court ruling. But first, he would need to organize.
In his message, Hill was pretty simple and direct. Why is it that we cannot have fair payment for the honest and hard work we do?
Despite the inherent risk involved with challenging whites, World War I veterans and other black sharecroppers became card-carrying members of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America.
We believe that by paying dues, these members could have the services of lawyers and sue plantation owners for cotton that had been stolen from them and false numbers that have been placed in the plantation stores' books.
On the night of September 30th, 1919, Union members gathered in Ellaine to discuss their legal plan.
This is in Phillips County. It's basically just a crossroads at this time, a road, a few houses, a railroad siding, no streetlights. There's also a one-room wooden church, and that's where the Union met. Expecting that they might have trouble, the Union posted a guard of about 6 men. They had shotguns and rifles. The meeting's taking place. While they're having this discussion, a car rolls up the road.
2 white men were in the car.
By one account, one of the white men in the car said, "You all get away from there." And shortly thereafter, a shot was fired.
Though it remains unclear who fired first, a barrage of gunfire broke out. One of the white men was killed almost instantly. The rumor of a black uprising spread in a matter of hours. The idea of a sharecropper rebellion conveniently played into the hands of landowners who did not want their sharecropping practices scrutinized. They did all they could, as quickly as they could, to sound alarms that black farmers were out for white blood.
The story gets magnified that the town is under attack, that blacks are killing people in the streets, that there is a revolution afoot.
The sharecroppers quickly formed self-defense groups, expecting repercussions over the death of a white man. But they could not have predicted just how severe the response would be. The following morning, under the watchful eye of Sheriff Frank Kitchens and his deputies, posses of white men were sent to find, detain, and kill the offenders.
When you have an out-of-control mob just being told there's a Negro insurrection going on, that mob's being very indiscriminate in its violence. You see houses being attacked, black-owned homes being ransacked.
The black school was burnt. Notable families were killed.
Black women and children have to go literally hide out in the woods because many of these people are indiscriminately shooting at African American women and their children.
Black veterans and other African Americans took up arms in self-defense.
This no doubt just feeds into the mob fervor. The fact that, oh, they're daring to shoot back at us. This must really be an insurrection.
One historian has identified more than 20 different killing sites where African Americans were being killed.
There are stories that mob members were taking souvenirs, such as ears or fingers from the bodies of fallen African Americans.
One of the leading black families of the county, they weren't even in the town. They had just received a brother back from the French front. They are pulled from a train, put in the back of a car, and they are stabbed, shot, and their mutilated bodies are left on the side of the road.
Within 2 days, 500 U.S. troops were sent to quell the supposed black uprising.
They don't find any blacks killing or shooting down the streets. In fact, Colonel Jinks reports that the city is filled with hundreds and hundreds of white men with guns. Many of the individuals who were hiding in the thickets were former soldiers who had just gotten back from the war. And when they see the army troops come, they rush out, believing that the army troops are there to assist them. The army believes that these people are rushing toward them to attack, and they're cut down by machine gun fire.
This brilliant monocular telescope is taking the world by storm. It lets you...
Although the exact number will never be known, a recent estimate suggests 237 black men, women, and children were killed. There was an immediate demand for justice, but not for the black lives lost. 5 white men were also killed in the fighting. Hundreds of African Americans were rounded up and put in jail, and when the jail was full, they detained the rest in a schoolhouse.
While they are detained, there is torture going on.
The goal? To elicit false confessions of a black uprising.
They whipped the men, whipped them for long periods of time. They stuffed formaldehyde up their noses, and they stripped them naked and shocked them with electrical charges. They did this until they confessed to the conspiracy.
Robert Hill escaped to Kansas, but his peers back in Arkansas were not as lucky. 122 indictments were issued, and trials quickly started.
The men were brought into the court in chains. They weren't allowed to consult with their defense attorney. The defense attorney rarely interjected, and then the all-white jury started delivering guilty verdicts. In one case, the guilty verdicts came back in 2 minutes.
It's also important to point out that there were mobs of people outside who were demanding black blood. Governor Bruff maintained that at some point these people would be killed, but they would have to have been killed justly.
The governor lived up to his word. When among the 87 black citizens charged with crimes, 12 were sentenced to death by electric chair. Despite the system being blatantly rigged against them, the convicted men had one unlikely beacon of hope: the American justice system. The trials of the Ellaine 12 had been highly publicized. The NAACP took notice and stepped in with legal help for the 12. For 4 years, the team faced a series of legal setbacks and advances, until in 1923, the case made its way to the Supreme Court in what is now known as Moore versus Dempsey. There, the defense argued that the original trials had been mob-dominated, and the black prisoners had been denied their constitutional rights. In a landmark decision, the court agreed.
The good that comes out of this is that the NAACP sees for the first time that it can win in the Supreme Court, that things don't always fall along the color lines.
The 12, subjected to torture, injustice, and litigation travesty, were at long last exonerated and released in January 1925. They might have escaped with their lives, but there was nothing that could reverse the pain and devastation felt by the black community in Phillips County, and no way to unsee the ungodly truth that American men, alongside the American government, were complicit in a massacre of American citizens on American soil.
We as a nation have grown and we continue to grow. We don't need to pretend as if we've always had everything figured out. But if we are to do justice to who we are as Americans, we've got to own all of it. Have you ever thought about becoming an online coach, helping people through your knowledge or passion from...
Yeah, so exactly. So that was it, you know. I had never heard of that before, the Ellaine Massacre. And like I said, this is why the Most High has these judgment coming. We'll just bring out this last precept. This is Galatians 6. Galatians 6 and 7. Be not deceived. You know, Esau has escaped judgment for so long. You know, it's come to the point where, you know, he has deceived himself that judgment will not be passed. But as we read in the previous scriptures, those are future prophecies. Yeah, that will happen. So it says, be not deceived. The Most High is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. This is why when we read the scriptures, it speaks about, I'll read this again, Ezekiel 35 and 6. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. See if thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. So you can't sow corn and reap peas. So what Esau has sown, he will reap. And one of the things he has sown throughout ages is a massacre. That is an indiscriminate and brutal slaughter of many people. It says deliberately and brutally kill. As I mentioned before, they said 200 odd people had died in that massacre. And I think around 3,000 died in the 9/11. And that wasn't deemed a massacre. So you can see the brutality that Esau has been exacting upon our people. Hence the judgment. But yeah, that was a video I wanted to share. Salakia for all the ads, nothing I can do about. But with that, I'm going to close out. I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Haraka Kadash, Kwame Allah.